Hello, friends, and welcome to Season 6 of the podcast. I'm so excited to be here with you today, and I have a special guest co-host, my daughter, Emma. Hi, Emma.
Hello, everybody.
Emma, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Emma. I'm her daughter. What would you like me to say about myself? I do lots of things.
I'm Olaf. I like warm hugs. Anyway, Emma was a fabulous co-host the last time we did a listener question and answer episode, and so I have begged her and beseeched her to take a break from her busy life to come and give me company on this new Ask Me Anything episode. So you guys don't need to hear all this nonsense. We're going to move right into things, but before we get to the questions, I wanted to take a minute for some housekeeping. Welcome to Homeschool Conversations with Humility and Doxology, a series of interviews with real-life homeschool moms, dads, and other educators on all sorts of topics that affect our lives as homeschool parents. I'm Amy Sloan, a second-generation homeschool mom of 5, and I am so delighted that you are here. Here on Homeschool Conversations, we'll discuss educational philosophy, family life, and more. Come chat with us. What can you expect in Season 6 of the Homeschool Conversations with Humility and Doxology podcast? Well, every other Monday, a new episode will drop in your feed straight to your earbuds, full of homeschool encouragement. But I will go ahead and tell you, because you know me, you know I have no chill. I have already actually recorded and scheduled 4 additional bonus episodes that will publish on those off weeks. So make sure you're subscribed to the podcast in your app of choice so you don't miss a single one. In fact, the very first bonus episode publishes next week, so there's a little spoiler alert. Okay, topics we are going to cover this season include homeschooling in times of crisis, organization, writing, Charlotte Mason homeschooling, Plutarch, and storytelling. I even interviewed my childhood friend and current in real life book club founder, so that was an especially meaningful episode for me, and I can't wait to share that one with you later this fall. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. Definitely don't miss the opportunity to binge past episodes. I have interviewed so many amazing people. People like Sarah McKenzie, Cindy Rollins, Amber Johnston, Pam Barnhill, Marty Machowski, and more. And you can actually always email me to request a personalized playlist of episodes that would be helpful to you in your current season of homeschooling. We have over 100 episodes right now in the archives. Did you know this, Emma?
That is a lot of episodes.
It's so much shocking. It's so awesome. Yes, but that's a lot of episodes, and that can feel overwhelming if you're looking back in the archives. So don't worry, just send me an email, amy@humilityanddoxology.com, and I will set you up with a personalized playlist. And would I be a podcaster? Would I even be a real podcaster if I didn't take a moment to request that you subscribe, rate, and review the podcast? It actually really does matter. When you subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast with your friends, it really makes a difference. So let's kick off Season 6 strong with lots of new reviews, please, and maybe you'll hear yours read on air in a future episode. Okay, that was a lot. Emma is looking at me like, wow, when do I get a chance to speak? Lucky for you, Emma. The time is now.
Okay, so we are going to jump right into questions. So the first question is from Rachel, and she asks, "This is my first year homeschooling my kindergartner. I have a question about standardized testing. I know it's different in each state, but do homeschool kids still need to take standardized tests? Thank you for all that you do. You're so good, Mom."
Oh my goodness. I'm going to fire you from this job. Okay, Emma and I tend to giggle a lot when we record podcasts together, so you'll just have to bear with me. If you're new to the podcast, I promise it's not normally a giggly podcast. We take ourselves not too seriously, though. So, all right, so let's talk about this question about standardized testing. This is a question that can really be on a lot of new homeschoolers' mind. It can be a source of stress and anxiety. And so I just want to say that it doesn't have to be a stressful experience. Our particular state of North Carolina does require annual standardized testing, but it doesn't have to be a source of anxiety. We get fun snacks, for instance.
the snacks make everything so much better. It becomes a thing that you look forward to because you get the snacks that you never have any other time.
Exactly. But let's go just real basic. I don't know where you live. Your state's laws are different than mine. So the very first step is to find the laws specific to your area. You can go to the HSLDA website. You can find your state homeschool organization, or my personal preference is read the law yourself, because it's really important to make sure that you know what is required and what is not required. So everything I'm going to say next, obviously, will have to submit to your legal requirements first. So definitely check out your legal requirements. As homeschool parents, we know that there are really so many important things that a standardized test just can't measure. A standardized test can't measure compassion, creativity, kindness, or wisdom. And so it's important to keep those tests, like the limits of what it actually is testing, in perspective. Achievement tests can help you pinpoint strengths and weaknesses that your child has in comparison to others who are using the same level of curriculum. And one of the reasons why I don't get too upset about the standardized testing requirements in our state is the reality is testing is itself a skill. And in fact, I even tell my kids, like, this test is really testing how well you test more than how smart you are. And most kids are at some point in their life going to have to take some sort of test that really does matter, like the SAT or the ACT or the CLT. And test taking as a skill is a good one to kind of not have that be your first experience seeing a test. But on the flip side, I know that testing can be a really stressful situation for some kids. So if you do not have to test by your state laws, I would actually encourage you not to test in the early elementary years. Don't use a standardized test until your child is a little older. Now, in my state, you do have to test from age 7 or first grade, whichever comes first, on. And some of the kids in my family have been fluent readers at that stage, and so the test has basically been a breeze. It hasn't been a stressful thing. But this past year, my youngest son, who is a struggling reader, really had so much trouble with the test. And he was crying and feeling so discouraged and overwhelmed. And I essentially let him skip a good bit of the test. And knowing that would reflect in the quote unquote score at the end. But I already knew what he knew and didn't know. We were following the law, jumping through that hoop. But I didn't want him to have this idea that testing is scary or sad. And I also don't want him to think that his intelligence or learning or creativity has anything to do with the score on the test. So it just kind of was something I'd always said to my kids. But this year, I had to say, do I actually believe what I've always said? And so if you don't have to test in the early grades, I would not. Another choice we've made in our family is I never tell my kids their scores until they take the PSAT or the SAT. I don't share it with my friends. I don't tell the grandparents. We don't need the comparison between siblings. We don't need some kids to brag. We don't need other kids to be stressed. All those things. And what's the thing I always tell you guys about the test?
The test is testing mom, not student.
That's right. I always tell the kids, the test is testing me. It is not testing you. And so we just leave the scores between me and the principal, who would be their dad. I will include notes in the links in the show notes for 2 posts on my site that will be really helpful and go into a lot more detail. One is called Standardized Test Prep for Homeschool Families, and I share my family's secret apple puzzle recipe in there. And another post is how to choose the best standardized test for your homeschool family. So definitely check those links for more details about standardized testing.
Lovely. Okay, so our next question is from Emily. She says, I've listened to your podcast for quite a while now and haven't heard you mention anything about homeschool co-ops. Does your family participate in one, or did you in the past? We recently moved to a new area and I'm trying to decide if joining a co-op is worth it. We would love homeschooling friends since we haven't made any yet, but the commitment of joining seems overwhelming to me at this point. Obviously, there are lots of factors to think through, but I'd love your thoughts.
Yeah, so our family has personally not chosen to participate in a traditional co-op where, when I think of a co-op, I think of you're going one place like one day a week and you're taking a set of classes. And that was not something that was of interest to me. I like to be able to customize our homeschool and pick my own curriculum, outsourcing classes when I need to for specific kids in specific subjects. But I didn't want to give up that flexibility of choosing unique curriculum, and I certainly didn't want to give up the flexibility of my schedule for a full-scale co-op. We are members, however, of a local support group, and this is much more what I was familiar with for my own years as a homeschool student myself. And so we do field trips, we have parties. The Valentine's bowling party is a favorite tradition around here. And there are also monthly moms meetings. So we actually gather together as moms. And I have found that to be just the right balance of community and camaraderie, but without, we can all homeschool in our own ways. Like none of us use the same curriculum. And I kind of like that. I like the variety there. But it is important, like you mentioned, wanting to find homeschooling friends. So other places that you can find potentially new homeschooling friends are nature groups. I have some friends, shout out to Carlina and Heather, who participate in like a nature study kind of group. So they meet together regularly with friends for outdoor activities and nature art. You can also go to your Facebook groups and search to see if there is a local Facebook group in your town or county for homeschoolers. Now, I don't really suggest hanging out in Facebook homeschool groups very often because people get real intense in there. But you can try to find like-minded people to meet up at a park for a play date and then see if they're people that you want to pursue long-term. And of course, there's sports and art classes. There's so many options for community that you can find and establish for your family, even if you're not part of a co-op. That being said, I have tons and tons of friends who are in co-ops. They love them. They can be a really great fit for a lot of families. They just aren't a good fit for ours.
Okay, so here are some.
This episode is brought to you by the Year of Memory Work, my free resource to help you incorporate more beautiful pieces of memory work in your homeschool day. The Year of Memory Work provides you 52 weeks of beautiful poetry, famous speeches, historic documents, and more, so you never have to wonder what to memorize or recite next. With my free printables, it's easy to include the recitation of your choice in your morning time routine. Plus, for each piece of memory work, there's also a video in which I or one of my children recite the poem or speech for you. Sometimes we even get a little goofy. With 52 items to choose from, you're sure to find something your whole family will enjoy. Head to humilityanddoxology.com and click the menu button at the top of the page to easily navigate to the Year of Memory Work. Or head to Humility and Doxology on YouTube or Facebook, where I have all the videos rounded up in a Year of Memory Work playlist.
Common questions, not from a specific person, but what curriculum do you use?
Yeah, so lots and lots of people were asking me that this summer, and I wanted to maybe write a blog post, but I had to actually homeschool my children, so the blog post didn't happen. So this is where we're just going to kind of breeze through this. I will put links in the show notes for this episode over at humilityanddoxology.com. You can always reach out to me with any questions, but I will just kind of run through quickly what we are using in our homeschool this year with each kid. So my oldest son is a senior this year, and he is actually full-time dual enrollment at our local community college. So as well as working about 21 to 24 hours a week, so outside the home. So I do a lot of getting him places and facilitating his life and being his emotional support, but less active teaching. So we'll go from him, kind of like, that's all I have to say about his school right now. But we'll move all the way down to the baby of the family, little Mr. Isaac, who is in 2nd grade this year. For math, we are using Math with Confidence by Kate Snow. I actually have interviewed her on the podcast before. This is our 3rd year using Math with Confidence. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend it more highly. So far, she has kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade published and is going to continue through the elementary levels of math each year. For reading, he is reading out loud to me for about 15 minutes each day, just from a very simple phonics-based reader. When we finish that one, I will get him another one to read, and we're just practicing that to help develop reading confidence and reading fluency. We already finished the Ordinary Parent's Guide to Teaching Reading last year, but the fluency is just not there. It's just going to take time and practice. I am using First Language Lessons, which takes about probably less than 15 minutes a day. And this is the same book I used with all of my kids, actually. I've had it since Joshua was a little guy, and I love it. It's just open and go. We learn poetry, some basic grammar, do some narration with Aesop's Fables and picture study, and it's super simple, and Isaac actually really likes it. For spelling, I have not done spelling with every child. I haven't done spelling with most of the children, but for some of the children who have needed a little extra help, Emma's laughing. Anyway, we have used All About Spelling and highly, highly recommend it. I'm using it with Isaac this year, again, to help reinforce some of the to help with some of the difficulties he's having with his reading. And it's great. Highly recommend All About Spelling. I will say that the magnet tiles are terribly annoying, and
just get the app.
Yeah.
It's so much better.
We skipped those after trying that for a little while with an older sibling, and got the app, and I was like, this is magical. I love it so much. So it's basically just the tiles, but they're in the app, and so they can't fall over the place and get lost, and you don't have to keep them on a big tray at the top of your bookshelf. It's pretty great. Let's see. This is going to take forever. I better go. Well, I can't go faster because I'm already talking really fast. Okay, so history is with his older sister, and we pursue a textbook-free approach to history. So there's a lot of reading, some timeline work, and narration, and associated art and stories and things like that. So I actually have a whole history masterclass where I teach you how to curate and create your own unique multi-age homeschool history curriculum without a textbook or any kind of boxed program needed, and I will link that in the show notes. We are studying early American history this year, so that's been super fun. I always enjoy that time period of history. For science, that's another thing that Isaac is doing with his older sister, and I like to kind of do things outside the box for science as well in the younger years, and so they have an audiobook, an Apologia Exploring Creation audiobook that they listen to. I'm loving the unit study pages from the Waldock Way. My friend Jessica Waldock has created just an incredible unit study that you can use across multiple grades, and it would actually stand alone if you just wanted to use it as your core of your science curriculum. So that is sort of Isaac. I'm skipping a few other things, but those are the main things that we do every day. It's reading, spelling, language lessons, math, and then the history and science he does with his sister. Whew. Okay, moving on to Grace, who is in 5th grade. For math, she is continuing Math UC this year. She has enjoyed that program the past few years, so I think this is her last year using Math UC. We also are using Well-Ordered Language, the grammar curriculum from Classical Academic Press. She did that with her older sister last year, and I just really loved it. I love everything that Classical Academic Press makes. They don't take themselves too seriously, and so there's just a lot of joy in their programs, but they're also incredibly rigorous. I've already gone over the science and history that she is doing with her siblings, but I will mention that for writing, we are doing something a little different. In the past, we've used writing and rhetoric the past couple years. But this year, Grace told me that she really wanted to learn about writing poetry. So I just sort of created my own little mini poetry writing unit study based on some poetry books we had, and giving her assignments each week to write her own example about whatever new poetry style she was learning. And I think she's been enjoying that so far. I have tons and tons of poetry resources over on my website, including an ultimate poetry book list. So be sure to check that out. So I will go ahead here too and say for Latin, because this affects both my 5th grader and my 7th grader. I have mentioned on social media, I think in the past, but I kind of accidentally ruined Latin for some of my children. Emma, would you like to tell us what you did with your Latin book at the end when you were done?
Oh, yeah, I burned it in the fire pit. Flames. Fire. It was great.
Yes. So I felt kind of guilty, but I liked Latin. I don't know how I ruined it so terribly. So one of my big picture goals this year is to restore the love of Latin for my 7th grader who hates it, and to preserve the love of Latin with my 5th grader who enjoys it. And so we are taking a step back from continuing in the next level of Latin, and we are doing some vocabulary and grammar review using the material we already had from Latin for Children, again, Classical Academic Press. They have a Latin monkey match Go Fish game that they play. We're doing a little bit of translation every week from history books that I had that went along with those earlier levels of the Latin for Children. And we're also watching a Latin per diem video, which is just under 4 minutes every day in morning time. And so far, that seems to be going really well. I wanted them to gain confidence and find a little bit of the joy of Latin. All right, my 7th grader, Sophia, is finishing up Mr. D Algebra 1 for her math. I wrote a review of that last year, and so you can check out that full review or watch the video on YouTube. She's also going to be taking her very first outsourced writing class with a local teacher. I'm super excited. It's a teacher that Emma and Joshua have taken from in the past. And did you have a positive experience?
Yeah, she's really lovely.
Yeah, she's a great teacher and just really inspiring. And so I'm excited for Sophia to kind of branch out there. She also is doing the same science that her younger siblings are doing, and Latin is the same. And then she is moving up in the world here. Sophia is now doing, though, her history. She is participating in the read aloud that I'm doing with Grace and Isaac, but she is going to be beginning a humanities program with her older sister. And so these are lectures from Dr. George Grant, previous podcast guest. Lots of assigned reading journals, timelines, quizzes, discussions, all the things. So how would you explain, what is a moral philosophy or a humanities approach? How is it different from just a history textbook?
So I guess kind of the philosophy of this course is that it's not just about dates and events. It's about the people and the ideas of those people, the worldview, if you will, and how that shapes the course of history, and how the people affect the history, and not just things happen and in what order they happen.
Yeah, and one of the things Dr. Grant always emphasizes is that culture is religion externalized. And so thinking about the ideas and how ideas have consequences and are worked out throughout history is incredibly important and relevant as we look around our world today. I will actually be writing more about that humanities program, so make sure you're on my email list so you don't miss when that publishes later this fall. And now we're to Miss Emma herself.
Wow.
And she's in 10th grade this year. And so Emma is also doing the humanities lectures and reading, but I'm also incorporating a U.S. government credit, since I did this with her older brother as well. When he studied early American history, it was just a perfect time to also go ahead and work on our a U.S. government credit. And so government and economics stuff going on, lots of civics. And I have that whole free curriculum plan I made for high school U.S. government and economics available on my website. So I'm excited. What have you read so far? What was that first one?
Whatever happened to penny candy, I think that's what it was called. It's about inflation.
Again, how appropriate and timely. Emma is taking an outsourced local French class, doing French 2 this year with just a dear lady, a friend of mine, and a few other teens. She is taking a British Lit and writing course from Center for Lit. So that actually has not yet begun at the time of this recording, but it will be awesome.
It's good. I'm so excited for it.
Yeah, and I love the Center for Lit folks. I've had a couple of the Andrews family as previous podcast guests. Highly recommend going back and listening to my chat with Missy Andrews if you have not yet already. Emma finished up pre-calculus last year, so she's already done, the algebra 1 and 2, geometry, pre-calc, trig, and rather than jumping straight into calculus this year, we decided to do statistics and trying something totally different, but we went with the Life of Fred statistics book. And so far, is it going okay?
Yep, it's going great.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be really interesting, and the kind of quirky approach of Life of Fred I think is going to be great for Emma, who is making faces at me. Along with that, we also were doing something a little unique for science. Emma's done biology and chemistry. And so this year she was like, can I please not do physics? I just want to do a science that doesn't have math in it. Which, okay. So we went with astronomy, and Nat Bowditch would be so appalled that she thought astronomy doesn't have math in it.
Okay, it does have math, but not like chemistry has math. It's different math. It's cool math.
It's cool math. So I'm excited about this. She's using the Signs and Seasons curriculum from classical astronomy. And appreciate my friend Ann Carrico, who is actually sent us her used textbooks. So shout out to Ann. Thank you. And if you don't already know who Ann Carrico is, she is the lovely lady behind It's Not That Hard to Homeschool High School. And she is the person I vox her often with my high school freakouts. So definitely recommend her. Another fun thing with Emma this year is it's her first year doing the dual enrollment program at the community college. So this fall, she's taking a music appreciation class. It's the same professor, the same class that her older brother took. He's a really great teacher, and I'm excited for her to have this experience. So I think that was basically all that we're doing. That seems like a lot. I felt like I just talked a lot.
Well, there are a lot of us.
There's so many of you. But the guys, kind of the summary of this for people who have fallen asleep now, come back in with me. The summary is I just do things very eclectic. It's different year to year, kid to kid. We're heavy on the books and a textbook-free approach, especially to history and science. And the publisher I probably use the most overall is Classical Academic Press. Emma is showing me where in my notes on this outline I said run through quickly the things we're using this year. Are you trying to tell me something? You don't think that was quick?
No way.
Okay, so again, like I said, I will have links to those things I mentioned in the show notes for this episode over at humilityanddoxology.com. And you can always email me if you have any specific questions about any of the things I just mentioned. And I'm sorry I was not apparently fast enough. But now let's hear from podcast sponsor and Sloan family favorite, Mr. D himself from Mr. D Math.
Does your child love math, surpassing your ability to teach them? Or maybe you have a child struggling in math and you're looking for a solution that will help them finally get it. You want your teen to understand, love, and enjoy their math curriculum. Is that too much to ask? At Mr. D Math, we've got you covered. Many times a young person says they hate math simply because it hasn't been explained in a way that makes sense to them. At Mr. D Math, our teachers are dedicated to providing accessible support, instructing with clarity, and making math fun. We work with students from around the world, helping connect educational concepts to their everyday lives and exposing them to endless possibilities and potential for their futures. Head to MrDmath.com to check out our live and self-paced course options for math, life skills, test prep, and more. We even have courses to get your child ready for high school math or help them catch up or get ahead in a semester or less. Go to MrDmath.com or click the link in the show notes to see how Mr. D Math can bring clarity and joy to your homeschool.
Here at the end, I'm going to ask Emma the questions I always ask my guests.
Wow, I'm so excited.
I think she's making fun of me. Teenagers are great. Okay, so the first question is, Emma, what are you reading lately?
Okay, so there was a book that I was going to say, but I forgot the title and I don't have it with me. So I'm going to say the other book that I'm reading, which is The Hidden Art of Homemaking by Edith Schaefer? Yes, that's who it is. And it is about making the ordinary things in life, not like the fine arts, you know. You're not necessarily like going to be a world-class painter, but still using art and music and, you know, cooking and making things in your ordinary life beautiful, and how that is an expression of God's character and why it's really important as Christians to make things not just like work and not just have them, you know, be practical, but have them be beautiful, because beauty is part of God's character. So, yeah. And I'm really, really enjoying that book.
Yeah, that is actually the same copy of the book that I read when I was a teenager. Oh, it's a good one. Okay, so I'm a guest on my own podcast today, so I thought I would tell you what I'm reading lately, but I will relate it to you as well. So this is a read aloud currently in our morning time is Carry On, Mr. Bowditch.
I love that book.
It is just fabulous. It is probably one of the books I've read aloud the most frequently, because, well, that and like Across 5 Aprils, I feel like every time we get to this time period of history, I'm like, guess what book we get to read out loud again? And it works really well actually as a read aloud. I do not like read aloud books where the chapters feel so long or like slow paced. Those are just hard to read aloud. But these chapters, something dramatic always happens in every single chapter. Don't spoil it. And something dramatic always happens. So you feel like the action continues to build and you really want to know what happens next. But they're also not too long and they're easy to read aloud. So highly recommend that one for multiple ages. It's a really great read aloud book.
And it's about a real person, so you can feel like extra fancy because it's like history.
Yes, it's historical fiction, but it's about the life of a real man, Nathaniel Bowditch, who was an American navigator and just
mathematician and
all around
genius.
Brilliant person. Yes. So super recommend that book. Okay. I'm going to ask this question just because it's hysterical to me. And I'm hoping Emma gives quite as fabulous an answer as she gave to me in the van when I asked her this question. But Emma, what would be your best tip for helping the homeschool day run more smoothly?
Well, I'm really an expert on this topic since I've just done this so many times. But from what I've gathered from the many episodes of Homeschool Conversations, I would just say, you know, just vibe it out. Like, there are going to be days that are going to be rough. And so not making those things like the thing that you remember because making it a bigger deal than it is, because, you know, maybe it'll be next week, maybe it'll be a month from now, but it'll be, you know, it'll be fine. And there will be other happy days. And also, I think everyone says to go outside, so I'll say that too.
So vibe it out, go outside. I love it. That's really profound.
I know. I'm just so good at this.
Oh, you guys, this has been so much fun. Emma, thank you for not making me record this by myself awkwardly.
You're welcome. Although I'm sad there aren't any juicy questions like there were last time.
I know. Wow. If you want to go back and really hear like the dish on, I guess, how I met John and our day of infamy and everything, I mean, there were some juicy questions in that last episode.
It was real.
Definitely go back. That would be the first episode of season 5 of the podcast. But you get your chance to send me questions for the next listener Q&A. So, you know, Send me some juicy ones next time. But these were also really good questions.
They were decent. Good job, guys.
Oh my goodness. Em and I better stop now before we get in trouble. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the podcast, The Adventure. I would love to connect with you on Instagram or Facebook. I'm at Humility and Doxology there, at Humility and Doxology on YouTube, and of course, humilityanddoxology.com, where all the past Homeschool Conversations episodes are there. Tons and tons of great resources for history and science and literature and all the things. And if you are one of my very super special email subscribers, you get to look forward each Monday to a weekly poem sent straight to your inbox. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks, you guys, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening in on this week's Homeschool Conversation. For show notes and links to all the resources we discussed, head to humilityanddoxology.com/homeschool-conversations. And if these episodes are an encouragement to you, would you take a moment to leave a rating and review and to share with your friends? I am so thankful that you are here on this adventure with me. Let's repent of our constant striving, relish the joy of learning, and rest in the work of Christ on our behalf. Stand fast, my friends.